What does it mean when we ask our sons to act like a man? When we tell young boys this, what do we want him to believe acting like a man should look like? In this video, I'm going to be teaching you what toxic masculinity is, how it's learned through social constructions of hegemonic masculinity, and how toxic masculinity affects men and women. I hope this video is able to do two things. First, I hope that it can help you spot toxic masculine traits, and two, I hope that you can see the effects that it can have on people. Before we jump into the topic of toxic masculinity, it's important that we go over just what masculinity is and how there's not just one hegemonic form of masculinity. Feminist scholar Simone de Beauvoir has an extremely popular quote that feminists use to describe social constructions of women. The quote goes, "One is not born a woman, but rather becomes one." I would argue that this quote would describe masculinity as, one is not born a man, but rather becomes one. What this means is that the identity that men develop as men is socially constructed through dominant cultural ideologies and gender norms that are taught to young boys in all different facets of their social life. Parents, institutions, and peers are a few examples of outside factors that construct a man's masculinity. So when a baby boy is born, he's not already a man. What makes someone a man comes from the social constructions of gender that differ depending on time and place, class status, sexuality, race, culture, ethnicity, or religion. For example, westernized versions of what a man is differs from what a man should be in other cultures, and places like China, Brazil, or Iran. Even in the United States, masculinity is ever-changing and doesn't just have one hegemonic male figure. Again, factors like class, sexuality, race, and religion all affect masculinity and ideals of manhood. However, because of patriarchy and white privilege in America, the most privileged make these constructions of masculinity and propel these ideas into their media, news, government, stories, and institutions. So then, what is toxic masculinity? Well, according to What is Toxic Masculinity and Why Does It Matter by Carol Harrington, toxic masculinity emerged with the mythopedic men's movement of the 1980s, and was coined by writer Shepard Bliss. Bliss confirmed in an email to Harrington that he coined the term to characterize his father's militarized and authoritarian personality. During the 1990s and early 2000s, toxic masculinity spread from the men's movement into wider self-help academic and policy literature. According to the notions of toxic masculinity, what it is to be a good upstanding man is to have the traits that fall into the toxic masculine box. Traits of toxic masculinity could include things like power and strength over others, a lack of emotion or issues expressing emotion, dominance over others, sexual aggression and control, low empathy, glorification of violence, sexism, homophobia, classism, or racism. Probably one of the most important parts of toxic masculinity is that you must suppress any sort of weakness. In 2016, during the United States presidential election, toxic masculinity resurfaced as a topic of concern for many feminists when Donald Trump ran for president. Here, we will use the example of Donald Trump to see how hegemonic toxic masculinity displays itself in a person, and then we'll be able to see how his dominant ideologies were able to spread to so many.
Get out of here! Get out! Out!
When you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab him by the pussy.
She doesn't have the look. She doesn't have the stamina.
I'm much richer than almost anybody.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no?
There has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah.
In fact, I would create a TV show for you where all you did was just judge women.
Now, that may be the best idea of all.
Well, I'll tell you the funniest is that I'll go backstage before a show.
Yes.
And everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else. And, no men are anywhere. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant, and therefore I'm inspecting it. I'm inspecting. I want to make sure that
like
everything is good.
You're there.
Yeah, the dress. Is everyone okay? They're standing there with no clothes. Is everybody okay? And you see these incredible-looking women. And so I sort of get away with things like that.
And maybe that's a question you should ask China. Don't ask me. Ask China that question, okay? When you ask them that question, you may get a very unusual answer. Yes, behind you, please.
What, sir, why are you saying that to me specifically?
I'm telling
you.
I'm not saying it specifically to anybody. I'm saying it to anybody that would ask a nasty question like that.
That's not a nasty question.
Please go ahead.
I'm so sorry for that. Those clips were just a few ways of how toxic masculinity can present itself in a person. Trump's hegemonic toxic masculinity. He positioned himself as a patriarchal masculine protector. He would dominate conversations, believing his word was the only correct one. He would admit to sexual assault against women and think it was some kind of heroic act of masculinity. He's obsessed with a strong military and militarization, and he just can't admit when he's wrong. The problem here is that hegemonic toxic masculinity was spread by Donald Trump to his followers. The problem now is that we have men that were influenced by Donald Trump to be like Donald Trump. Ideals of toxic masculinity have been idealized by so many through Trump's influence. So how does toxic masculinity affect us? And why is it such a problem that we've seen such a wide spread of toxic masculine traits? For women, when they're in relationships with these types of men that hold these toxic masculine traits, they could be more likely to experience domestic or sexual violence, lack of emotional closeness, or subordination to the man of the house. For men, side effects of toxic masculinity can affect their mental health. For men, the rate of suicide is highest in middle-aged white men. In 2020, men died by suicide 3.8 times more than women. Further, men tend to use more lethal means, including firearms and hanging, and they show fewer warning signs that they will do it. One reason this happens is because of the hegemonic male gender roles that discourage emotional expression. Men are told they're supposed to be tough and that they should not need to ask for help. This role makes it hard for men to reach out when they need because it could be taken as a sign of weakness. Another study showed that instead of verbally communicating emotional problems, men tend to act out their stress. It is not uncommon for them to deal with their stress by working more, engaging in risky activities, and more important, turning to alcohol and drugs, all in an effect to avoid or numb the awareness of an underlying problem. So we can see here that toxic gender roles such as toxic masculinity and all it encompasses can have dire effects. We need to teach men that it's okay to cry like a boy. Men cannot be brought up in such a way where they need to hide their emotions. They need to be able to ask for help when they need it. Men can be emotionally vulnerable. Additionally, we need to stop electing people who heroine toxic masculine traits as something to be proud of, because it normalizes toxic masculinity and it influences others to adopt these traits. This video is not an attack on men. In fact, it's quite the opposite. This is an attack on social norms and traits men are pressured to fit into, that in the long run have failed men. I hope this video was able to help you understand what toxic masculinity is and how it can harm people in our society. If you need help, I urge you to reach out to your friends or family. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to leave a list here of depression and suicide hotlines. We all have mental health issues, and it's okay to reach out when you need to. Thanks for watching my first video. I hope to make more, and I hope you subscribe and come back. See you later. Bye.